Here are some images of the day this property was bought. It was an $18,000 investment, had many things going for it, including a bat cave, a really pristine river, and was really tranquil and lush. Everything was incredible. The reality is when we came back, the land had exploded, a river was out of control, a hill came down, and the destruction was incredible, stripping all the topsoil, leaving only gravel and rock behind. So the idea was to decide what to do. So the decision was made to organize the land and organize the materials in such a way that they could be reused again. The road was 2.5 kilometers away, so there was very little option of bringing in materials on horseback. So we started creating the the building platform, which was about 5 to 6 feet of gravel, total of about, we estimate 200 tons of gravel to build that platform. So it was an absolute management of materials and a struggle to manage these materials. Here we're running a line out of the cave so it drains well. This once fertile land has now turned into a gravel pit. But to our advantages, we were able to manage all the materials, saving the precious topsoil, organizing everything in such a way that it had a function. Here we're working on the river, just organizing it so it doesn't do this massive destruction again. And we created a double S and waterfalls to slow the river down so it had further to go and more obstacles to conquer. Here we're harvesting the deep sandy soil that's underneath the river, and we're using that for the garden. We're just basically going to put rocks here, so we might as well harvest the soil. These large trees came down, and thankfully the neighbors, after we cut it all up, took it for firewood, which was really good. So again, everything needs to be processed, managed, organized, just to get this job site back on track again, and being able to start the build. Here we laid out all the 5 washrooms. We used string lines to run out the entire building, 5-unit building. And here we're using the rocks to build the dipping pool and to build the walls of the river. And there's rocks everywhere, I mean everywhere. So you have to take advantage of that because they are quite nice. They have good flat surfaces. Here we're securing and organizing the cave so we can store our materials without having them stolen. And this was very necessary because, bringing expensive tools down here and just to lose them is madness. So we basically dug this cave out and used it for storage. It was quite dry, so that was good. Not an ideal place to store tools, but nonetheless, safe is better than sorry in this case. So by digging out this cave, we basically had this great big workspace to store everything. And we didn't have electricity for the longest time. We brought electricity in so we could run all the machinery that we had to mix and to cut and to grind. So having the electricity was a huge advantage. So the cave had to be supported with these great big rebar columns and roof beams, and that made it very safe for people to go in and to work. It was incredibly safe. The material was here we started laying out all the footings for the building. It was quite a big building, and luckily we had all the gravel on site, so we had to bring in rebar and material. At this time of the build, there was no road, so we had to walk all this stuff in 2.5 kilometers, including septic tanks, electric poles, everything you could imagine. And just having all this material on site made it even possible. Without it would be impossible. Here we're setting up some massive columns for the corners, and everything is run off string line and lasers, so we did get everything perfectly lined up. This is the kitchen area with all the plumbing in place, and we're fortunate to have this massively thick gravel base underneath this building, so it's not going to move, or it's never going to really shift with earthquakes or anything like that. So the layout was quite tricky because it was such a long building, and we had to be very cautious. We have plastic underneath all the footings, all the pipes are in place, we have rebar right through, so this was not underbuilt. We used lots of rich cement and fibers in the cement, polypropylene, just to make the cement even stronger. And we know everything's going to be tiled on top of this, so it wasn't, we just had to get everything level and looking good. We tried to keep the pour continuous, so what that means is every day we would keep the edge wet by keep doing another building the next day. And this continued until we got all the footings done and everything filled in with gravel, so we had this great big starting point to work with steel studs. And these guys have never seen steel studs before, so they were looking forward to the opportunity to start framing up this entire building with steel studs. And it went really smoothly. They learned quickly. It was great. Here we're doing an underground storage unit or storage space. And these guys are putting a frame in that is going to be used as the space to cast against. And by having the storage unit, we could actually have some of the stuff from the Ecolodge that we didn't use every day underneath the building, which was really good. We built another bigger one in Unit 5 later on, and these underground storage facilities are actually really not that hard to make if you're still in this stage of construction, so it's really not a bad idea to have something underground that allows you to store stuff that you don't use every day. The rebars are coming out here, they're putting it behind the wall, then we're going to cast this with one cast. Solid cast, so it's going to be a very solid piece of work. And then we cast the floor. We have floor drains tied to this that in case there's any flooding or anything, that the drain can carry it. Here we're quite a bit further. We're having a bit of fun throwing fruit for our lunch break, or our fruit break. And these guys were well fed, which made it a lot easier to keep the energy levels up. And as you can see, we're progressing quite quickly. This pour went quite quickly. It was a lot of cement. We had to use our horses to bring in all the actual bags of cement. So it was quite tricky to get all this material down here. Anyways, we progressed really well, and here's the team. These are the guys that helped set up everything to build it, and they were glad for this opportunity.